present a lecture on electrostatic. This is the first unit of class 12th physics, and we have to start with electrostatics. Here the word electro means electric, which means charges, and static, which means rest. So study of that branch of physics in which we deal with electric charges which are kept at rest is called as electrostatics. So while dealing with this chapter, we have to first understand what do you mean by electric charge. Here electric charge. So now what do you understand by electric charge? Every body is neutral if a body has deficiency or excess of electrons from normal due to sharing, then the body is said to be charged or electrified. So a body is said to be charged or electrified if it either has deficiency or excess of electrons from normal due to sharing. So if a body loses some electrons, then we say that the body becomes positively charged, and if a body gains some electrons, then we'll say that the body becomes negatively charged. Now what is the SI unit of charge? SI unit of charge is coulomb, CGS unit is stat coulomb, and the relation between the two is 1 coulomb is 3 into 10 to the power 9 stat coulomb. Now the point is it's a scalar quantity. Now there are different processes of charging. And in class 12 physics we have to understand two basic processes of charging. The first one is called as rubbing process or frictional electricity process. You might have done this experiment before. You might have taken a scale, glass scale, and then you might have rubbed it with the hair which is assumed to be silky, and then once you take this glass rod towards the pieces of paper, then it tends to attract towards the glass rod. So we have to understand these two processes so that you can connect it with that experiment that you might have done before. The first process is rubbing or frictional electricity process. What we do in this process we rub two different bodies together. Then what happens when we rub two bodies together? Then because of the friction between the two bodies, heat energy is produced, and the body which has lower value of work function will lose some electrons to the body which has higher work function. The body which loses the electrons will become positively charged, and the body which gains those electrons will become negatively charged. For example, when we rub glass rod with silk hairs which are assumed to be silky, then glass rod loses some electrons and become positively charged. Silk, after gaining those electrons, will become negatively charged. So this is the first process. The next example is when we rub ebonite rod with catiphor or wool, then ebonite rod becomes negatively charged and wool becomes positively charged. What does that mean? That wool is having lower work function and ebonite rod is having higher work function. The lower work function body will always loses some electrons to the body which has higher work function. So in this process, we rub two bodies together. Because of the friction, heat energy is produced. The body which has lower work function will lose some electrons to the body which has higher work function. The body which loses the electrons will become positively charged, and the body which gains those electrons will become negatively charged. The second process is called as electrostatic induction process. Now what happens in this process? That we bring a charged body towards an uncharged body without touching. So whenever you bring a charged body, so for example we have a charged rod, and whenever we bring it towards an uncharged body, then this charged body will induce opposite charge on the front side and similar on the rear end. Thus these two bodies shows attraction, and this phenomena is called electrostatic induction process. So in this process, whenever you bring a charged body towards an uncharged body, then the charged body induces opposite charge on the front side and similar on the rear end. Thus the two shows attraction, and this phenomena is called electrostatic induction process. Now once you remove this rod, this body will again become neutral, but we have to charge this body. So what we are going to do is, after this process, we connect the rear end of this body to the ground, which is also called as earthing. Then what will happen? This negative charge will be accumulated here only because of this rod, but the electrons will come from ground and neutralize these positively charged ions. Once electron will come from ground and neutralize these positively charged ions, this body is having electrons which is accumulated on one side because of the rod. Now if I remove the earthing first and then the rod, this negative charge gets uniformly distributed over the body. Again remember, first you have to remove this earthing and then the rod. This accumulated charge gets uniformly distributed over the body and the body becomes completely negatively charged. So this is the second process of charging. So we have to understand these two processes. So earlier, once you were rubbing glass rod with here, you were doing first process, and once you have taken this glass rod towards the pieces of paper, you were doing second process, which is called as electrostatic induction process. So we have started a brand new chapter, electrostatics, in which we have started with what do you understand by charge, and when the charges are at rest, then it is called as electrostatics. This is a scalar quantity having SI unit coulomb, CGS unit stat coulomb. Now the question is from class 10th, what is the charge of an electron? The charge of an electron is minus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 electron, and you might have done in class 10th how many electrons are there in 1 coulomb of charge. So once you calculate how many electrons are there in 1 coulomb of charge, then you will obtain it as 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons are there in 1 coulomb of charge. Okay, so let's try to understand some basic properties of charges. There are basically 5 or 6 properties of charges. Let's start with the first one, conservation of charge. You might have seen that once we were rubbing two bodies together, then because of the friction, heat energy is produced. Lower work function body will lose some electrons to the body which has higher work function. So here charge is not getting created, charge is actually getting transferred. So according to this property, conservation of charge, charge can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only get transferred from one body to another, and this property is called as conservation of charge. Means the total charge of the system always remains constant or conserved. Next property is called as quantization of charge. You know that charge is a fundamental particle, electron is a fundamental particle. So whenever there is a transfer of electrons, it always takes place in an integral multiple of an electron, where n is an integer. Means fractional transfer of electron is never permissible or permitted. Whenever there is a transfer of electron, it should always be in an integral multiple. Means 4.5 electron can never get transferred. It should be 5e, 10e, minus 6e, but it will never be 2.25e. Fractional transfer of electron is not permitted and possible. This is called as quantization. Next property is called as additive nature of charge. According to additive nature of charge, since charge is a scalar quantity, so it can directly get added up. Suppose we have two bodies, one body is having a charge of minus 6 coulomb, the other one is having a charge of plus 4 coulomb. Once you add them together, then it will be minus 2 coulomb, because it's a scalar quantity. And the fourth property is invariance of charge. Unlike masses, charge will not vary with the speed of an object. For example, if a body is at rest or moving with almost the speed of light, then also the charge on the body will remain same. Whereas if you take two masses or one mass, if it is at rest but moving with very high speed, then mass do increases according to Einstein theory of relativity, where m0 is the rest mass, v is the speed of the body, c is speed of light, then this will be the mass at any speed. So mass do increases with speed, but charge will not vary with the speed of an object. So let's recapitulate this lecture 1 of electrostatics. Soon we are going to come with lecture 2, which will be based on Coulomb's law and numerical based on it. So this is the basic fundamental of the first unit, electrostatics, the branch of physics in which you are going to deal with electric charges kept at rest. Then what do you understand by electric charge? It is actually excess or deficiency of electrons from normal due to sharing. What are the basic properties? These are the basic 4 or 5 properties, and one more property you can add here: similar charges repel each other, opposite charges attract each other. Now the question for the day is, you know that whenever a body loses some electron, the body will become positively charged, and whenever a body gains some electron, the body will become negatively charged. The question for the day is, from where the charge on electron came, why it is a negatively charged particle. Thank you.